In this module, we're going to go over going through the entire system and testing the functionality of each one of the features, of each one of the settings, sticking to contact values, contact fields, relaying the information through integrations accurately, making sure we are going through and testing the marketing campaigns on ourselves before sending it to contacts, to clients, to prospects in the system. So from this first page, we're going to make sure that if we have already uploaded contacts and if we have already assigned deals, that they are all appearing on this dashboard. The number of the deals in all of the various pipelines will appear here. The deal value assigned to each one of those deals for these various contacts will appear here. And the conversion rate will most likely fill up over time. But this funnel, the stage distribution, the contact sources, what each one of those deals have been marked down as having coinciding by the contact. So the contact will have a lead source coming in from a certain source, coming in from a vendor, coming in from whatever groups you use, from Facebook, from Instagram, from EverQuote, any one of these different vendors that you're either spending money on or spending time on. We want to make sure all of those are coming in and populating accurately. We want to make sure that all these tasks, anything happening within your company is correctly displaying here. There's some past, today, and future tasks, but we want to make sure that everything is displaying as it should be. If there is a task at 12:01, we want to make sure that is appearing on here as tomorrow instead of today. So in the future instead of today. We want to make sure that any tasks in the past aren't appearing on today or in the future. This is all functionality that inside the system, if it's not occurring correctly, you need to make sure that you're chatting in with one of our representatives, and if necessary, recording the screen, explaining the errors or the bugs, copying that video link, and either putting it into that conversation or submitting a ticket on our help portal by going here and submitting it right here. From there, we want to make sure that all of the test replies, so we're adding ourselves as contacts in these various marketing campaigns, or we're adding ourselves as contacts and texting out, emailing out from the system, but we want to make sure that when ourselves as contacts reply to those touch points that we're sending out from Clique, that it's appearing here in this inbox. We also want to make sure that this right here is the most recent touch point being sent back to us from ourselves as test contacts, or from our colleagues, family, or friends that we've uploaded into the system and already gained approval for testing out these touch points. We want to make sure that all of that contact, all of those texts, all of those emails being replied to are appearing in the inbox. We want to make sure it's all showing up right here. We also want to make sure that to this quick reference to the right, all of this is being filled out correctly. All the deals are populating, all the campaigns, all the tags, notes, and activities, all the different tasks or appointments are all displaying. Everything is displaying correctly on this quick reference to the right. We also want to make sure in the deals pipeline that each one of these appears how we want it to. Do we want to have a name for this deal? Or do we simply want to have no name at all? Is that easier? Or is this providing more detail in our life? We want to make sure that this list view is displaying correctly. The amount of time that each one of these deals has been in a certain stage, and the closing date coincides with what you originally set up when you added a deal to a certain contact by clicking this button here. We want to make sure that this analytical view is accurate. We want to make sure that all this data is being put into the system correctly, because if it's not, we need to chat with a live rep or submit a ticket, so that when we do start firing all this off, it is all set up, it is all correct, and we don't have to waste time chatting in with live chat or with a support rep to get it fixed. We want to make sure that in the settings of these various pipelines, all the data is being translated to the dashboard if you decided to allow it to be. You want to make sure that if we go to the service pipeline and we stipulated it is not to display on the dashboard, that it is not displaying. And if it is, we need to chat with a rep. We need to make sure that all these processes are set up and that everything's correct and that we're on the right track before we start marketing using this system. I'll tell you about 95% of the tickets that come in are due to people not following our advice and testing out the functionality of this insanely robust system. We want to make sure that if we are creating call tasks, for example, if we are creating tasks within the system that we want to view in a list format, that all of them are appearing here as they should be. We want to make sure that we're testing, after we set up the calendar widgets, that we're testing it out and making sure it appears how we want it to. We want to make sure, hey, I want this to be the verbiage it displays. I want this to be the title of it, because this is what's going to be sent through the two-way third-party calendar integration to that prospect or to that client. We want to make sure that they are able to book at the times that we want them to be able to book. And that when they do book, that is all coming into Clique and being dispersed out to various sequences as we see fit. We want to make sure this functionality is up to snuff, because this is what your prospect or what your client is going to see when they book with you. We want to go through this calendar synchronization. A lot of people accidentally disconnect the calendar or don't save after they sync their account. They don't save down at the bottom, and they wonder why the appointments are not being translated to the Google Calendar, or why those events from Google Calendar are not coming into their account. It's because they didn't save, or because they accidentally disconnected it at a certain point. For example, if you go to change account right here and you put in your email and press reconnect, it's going to disconnect that calendar again. So we just want to make sure that in the calendar synchronization, everything that is being put into Clique's calendar is going into your Google or Outlook calendar, and everything being put into that external calendar is coming into Clique as it should be. One note there, everything that's put into Clique appears almost instantly, just a few minutes in these outside calendars, and everything put in those outside calendars come into Clique. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Next up is our contacts page. So we want to make sure that all these columns that we're viewing right here are relevant. We want to make sure we want to see all of this stuff. If we don't want to see all this stuff, disable all of this if you want to, because this is also going to go into how this list is going to be exported. So how all of this data is going to be exported from Clique if you want to put it somewhere else. And if you have all these columns if you chose all these columns and you exported that list after choosing all these different columns, it's going to export all of that data. Maybe we want to go through and make sure only custom fields are in there in addition to the base details. Maybe we want to disable the option right here to very quickly call, text, or leave ringless voicemails or emails for those contacts. It's entirely up to you, but you got to make sure that you're going through and including or excluding all the information as you see fit. And the marketing campaigns, we want to make sure that we are going through adding ourselves as test contacts, either as a single contact, or if we've already created ourselves in here, finding ourselves, because if you try to add yourself as a single contact and you're already in the system, it's going to disallow adding that phone number, adding that email that's already in the system. After we do that, and even after we've connected any Facebook ads, connected through Zapier, anything like that, any of that fancy advanced stuff, we want to make sure that these touch points are sending out as they should be. Now, one quick way to test all the functionality of all these touch points is to create each touch point 1 minute after the next. So touch point number 1 would be immediately, touch point number 2 would be 1 minute later, touch point number 3 would be 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later after that for the next one, 4 minutes later after that for the next one. So they come in one after the other in order. So that's going to show us that each one of those touch points is coming in as they should be, one after the other. But it's also going to show us how it will appear to the prospect or client. Like, are we seeming too kitschy? Is this not personalized enough? Do we have all the custom fields that we want in that personalization? Keeping in mind as you go, absolutely send yourself test emails when you create a new touch point, or test text messages, so on and so forth, test video emails. You want to make sure that you're testing the functionality of each one of those as you're going through the system, so that you can see, kind of basically how it's going to come in. But then once you're ready, and once you have it all panned out, you make sure that that all looks brilliant. Enroll yourself as the final step in this campaign, because you can only do that one time unless you delete yourself as a contact and then add yourself again to the system as a contact and do it all over again. So it's just kind of a pain to do that multiple times, whereas you can go through and test these a ton of times. I mean, you can go through and text yourself a test number or a test text message as many times as you like, over and over. But yeah, once you've gone through and done that, and you are confident with the marketing campaign, and you've enrolled yourself in the campaign, and you've tested the functionality of each one of these touch points, each one of these activities, actions, and webhooks, exporting that data into another service automatically. Once you've tested the functionality of lead groups and lead flows, and once you have tested the functionality of when you respond to this campaign, what happens automatically, then you are ready to move on to the form builder and testing the functionality of that. The campaign templates, there's not much to it, but let me review that briefly. If you have access to the campaign templates, you would just go through, you can preview them, and you can copy that into your system from here, or go back, choose that category again, find that campaign, and create the campaign in your system just like that. If you do that, one note, make sure to rename the campaign, make any edits to any of the touch points, review everything before you set it up and start enrolling contacts that could make you money in it. Next up, though, is the form builder. So to test the functionality of this form builder, you'll go through, add any fields or subtract any fields that you don't want in there. Any test fields or any custom contact fields are included in that. Make sure and go through and put all these through as well. Take them off if you do not want them. And save, please, as you're going, save each one of these fields being included in here. Now you can go through and add 100 fields and then save. You don't have to do one at a time. But the important part there is not navigating away and saving settings in another screen for this form before you have saved the fields. If you go through and add 100 fields, you navigate away to the form style and start editing the form style, the different colors and everything. Save style here. What it's going to do is save this. It's not going to save your fields. So make sure you are saving the fields. You have all of the contact fields for this form saved before you do any editing here at all. But after you're completed with doing all that, this is how you view what it looks like. So you'll go up to this top menu, Preview and Stats, and this is where you'll go through and have a little preview here, but more importantly, this link right here is going to show you the exact form that you will be sending to your prospect or to your clients. After you've gone through and done that, you can integrate this form, so test out embedding it in your website or editing the HTML. So going to an HTML editor is what I would recommend so you can view the changes you make in real time. But going through and editing this fully, copying it to the clipboard and putting it into whatever website or whatever service you'd like, I heavily recommend testing all of this before sending it out to anyone. You want to make sure it appears and it puts the information into Clique. For example, brings that data into a campaign automatically, or brings that data into a deals pipeline automatically. Creates a certain stage, a certain deal in a certain stage on autopilot for you. That's great functionality, but you have to make sure it works first. But after you've gone through and done all that, move on to quick replies. Create some quick replies in the system. You'll want to go through and create a text message. And then I want you to go through and create a ringless voicemail. And then I want you to go through and create an email and then a video email. Title each one of them something that you're going to remember if you're going to create a final draft of this template to send out later on. But after you've gone through and done that, go through and test the broadcast. If you navigate right over to this button right here, this is going to be how you broadcast that message to hundreds of contacts at once. Everybody enrolled in a certain campaign type, everybody with a certain tag, everybody who is in your system if you want. Every single person you choose here can all receive those correspondence. And then test that it's all going out on a custom date. Or even immediately, just make sure that message is getting out. From there, if you have gone through and uploaded a list to the marketing campaign, and you chose, when uploading that list, to have these touch points firing off in a drip sequence, this is how you can test and make sure that those are getting out. This drip batch report here is going to show you the stats of each and every single one of those touch points being sent out. So it's going to show you each and every one of the entries for that list being sent touch points from the marketing campaign. So each text message, email, everything you set up in that marketing campaign, this is how you're going to view those stats and make sure it's all sending out as it should be. Again, if any of this is not working correctly, please chat in with us. After hours, there is a form that you can fill out if you feel that maybe you're just doing something incorrectly, or if you feel very strongly that this is a bug or system error. I want you to go and click this button here, record your screen. You need to enable your microphone so that it will record your voice explaining what the issue is, and then it's going to populate a link. When it populates that link at the end of recording that video, I need you to copy that link and then go to the second button and submit the ticket. This ticket is going to go directly to our developers. That's why it's very important that you only use this functionality right here, submitting a ticket, when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is a system error, a bug, or a defect within the system. But after you have determined that, and you know that this is something that the developers need to know about so it gets fixed in my system and potentially gets fixed in other people's systems, go in, submit that ticket. Make sure when you submit this ticket, very important, that you're putting down the name and the account email that you signed up with Clique. When you very first signed up, it's going to be under that name and that account email. And then submit that request, and you'll be able to track that via email. But from there, You can also test the triggers. I would heavily, heavily, heavily recommend testing the triggers. So for example, if you create an opt-out mechanism within a certain campaign, or deleting this and making it system-wide whenever somebody responds stop in all capital letters, in the system whatsoever, it's removing them from all campaigns, it's adding a certain tag, it's creating any one of these different actions, sending emails, sending text messages to yourself, to them, to an external source. All of that can be done, but you need to make sure that you're testing the functionality of when this happens, all of this happens, or any one of these things happen. You have to test that before firing it off on actual contacts. Test it on yourself, please. Test it on your family, your friends, your colleagues. And the sales reporting is really just going to fill up over time. So as you're going to see this filling up with data, which is really neat, really fun. But there's not really much testing that goes into this, other than making sure that these columns are filling out correctly. Making sure that all the data that you want to view for yourself or any sub-users is all coming into the system as it should be. And then any goals. This is going to be a great thing to test and really, really fun. So you'll go through and create a goal for yourself, an entire team, or the entire company. Goal type, a certain pipeline, the expected outcome, the interval and duration of that goal. And after you set that, going in and making sure this is all tracking as it should be. That everything you set up in that goal is coming through and being communicated accurately within the system. From there, we're going to make sure all these settings are coming through correctly. Again, this is really covered on that entire last module, the settings deep dive, but you do want to make sure your signature is displaying when you send out emails, that your phone settings are correct when somebody calls in, what is being, played when they are being recorded, what kind of voicemail is coming through. Is that connecting to an outside number via forwarding that phone call? Are these custom fields coming through correctly? Are they being displayed to your prospect or to your client in a way that's not confusing or off? You can be very, very creative with these custom fields and say, hey, custom field 1, I just wanted to custom field 2, the custom field 3 we talked about last custom field 4. You can add all of that and it can be really, really neat and really personal, but is the verbiage strange? Is the verbiage weird when you do that? Is it coming across off-putting to your prospects or your clients? The pipeline settings, again, going through and making sure all those are as you want it to be, all the color codes, all the win probability percentage, everything. Lead sources, everything that's displaying in the ROI portion of the dashboard, the contact sources on the dashboard, lead groups, the entire company. So different lead groups, sales, service, marketing. Are each of those set up and receiving leads as they should be in the distribution style that you set up? The lead flow, are all of those leads coming in from those sources as they should be? Are all the tags causing the actions and the triggers as they should be? Are the general settings, are all these general settings in place? Are all these colors as you want it to appear to yourself and people in your company? What about the cutoff time? Is everything defaulting to this cutoff time as it should be? All of that. You want to make sure that all of those settings and the notifications are coming into you or your sub-users as they should be. And make sure that these templates, if you have not edited these yet, are deeply edited so that all the information you want to gather from that prospect or from that client who had created an activity or you've created an activity inside the system, Make sure that all that data is coming in as you want it to. From there, it's really just a matter of going through your profile, making sure all the data in there is correctly displaying at the end of emails. For example, the appointment URL, displaying in the email body at the bottom. And making sure your team is in order. So if you've already created sub-users in there, make sure that all their settings, all the data here is correct. Make sure that you can log in as them, and make sure they have the permissions set, the role as either an admin or an agent. I recommend admin. And that all these conversations are being shared with them or not. Make sure all these settings are correct, and make sure you log in and see what they can see before they can see it. You can go in, and once you create that account, you're going to hit this screen and see, wow, they're going through the entire setup process that I went through. And then once you go through that entire setup process, I want you to make sure that everything that is allowing them to view certain data in the system is functioning correctly. Make sure that they either are or are not allowed to view all that data. From there, you should be in great shape to start using the features of Clique. It's very important you go through this setup process and test every single one of those settings and every single one of those features inside of Clique. But once you do, you have the power in your hands. You are ready to move forward and move up. We will see you on the next one.